Okay.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Good morning. Careful. Good morning.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Harris, the Executive Director of the Museum, University of Mary Washington. I'm happy to say also I'm class of '83. And so I've been around as long, almost as Dan has done this program, or just about as long. We haven't exactly.
You're close. I'm ahead of you.
Pretty much all of us.
Yeah.
I want to thank always for their support of our programming. I will not give anybody by asking who is not trained in simply point out that if it's a convenience to you, our membership forms outside. And to encourage you joining, it not only provide you with some information about what we're doing, some discounts, that again, it is a way of giving back to what we do, and it's really the kind of support we need to do the public programming that the museum does. Friends of Belmont too, just my other out across the river. We are also fortunate once again this year to be selling the official White House Christmas ornament, this lovely gingerbread tradition or reminiscent of the gingerbread White Houses that are so popular. This one happens back to the Nixon era, the Pat Nixon's influence in getting the gingerbread competition going. So we encourage you to go ahead and take as many as you like. We have a supply that's dwindling, so act pretty soon if you want to get them. I know one person came in and bought 8 the other day. So we're really excited that they're flying out $28.95. You'll love it. So I always get the opportunity, and again, first time in 2 years to get the opportunity to welcome Jan back and welcome all of you back. So let's give her everyone COVID or monkeypoxes or anything. But we are really grateful that we are able to see people again in person, and we will be doing more in-person programming at both of our museums. We have next week the open house for the James Jerome Museum on Friday. If you are a friend of Belmont, you can come to the Belmont open house. So we're seeing people back out, and it's really great. And one of those great annual traditions was being able to come out and introduce Jan. And I know that we always have the cliche that there's a person that needs no introduction, and she really doesn't. But it's worth just noting some things that are really important, I think. She's a dear friend of this museum. She's been doing the program for 44.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is 44.
Christmas with all the trimmings way back in the day, as you may remember, and then this is the part of it that really has survived the longest. I think.
Yes.
Very sorry, but we are not the only people that have had the good fortune to be interacting with Jan. Illustrations of her work appeared in a lot of our area newspapers, the Freeland Star, the Richmond Times Dispatch, in Smithsonian, or excuse me, Southern Living magazine, Southern Living books. So, you know, we've been very visible out in the world. She's been a guest designer at the White House. So there's some wonderful reminiscence. Yeah, why not? And she's presented to garden clubs, community groups, social civic organizations, and again, this we like to feel is the one that's really been the anchor for a long time.
Yes.
We're certainly grateful. And I used to kind of say that Jan is the Martha Stewart of Fredericksburg. And I realize I've had it totally wrong. Martha Stewart is the Jane Williams of New Jersey. Please welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you and hello and welcome. Woo, it's nice to see everybody's face again. I think we did our best the last couple of years to try to keep this going. And it was a little challenging the first year, but we felt our way through it and it came out fine. So we're glad to be here again and we're glad to see everyone. And I'm going to start off with a few little different ideas. And, you know, I get inspiration when I'm trying to sleep usually, because I don't sleep a lot. And last night I was fortunate enough to go to the symphony. It was beautiful. And we were leaving there and somebody said, "Are you all ready?" I said, "Well, I'm kind of ready, but you know, I'm still thinking." And one of my good friends says, "Oh yeah, she's thinking," you know. So yeah, I do think about things like this best at night when I'm not being interrupted. And I had bought this, I don't even know where I picked it up, grapevine wreath. You can make one, but you can find them different places. I can't remember where I did find it, but I liked it because it has a mixture of heavy and light. And I found these stars. I'm not working for the dollar store, but Dollar General, green, and I painted them. I'm always looking out for something I could use that would work, you know, because I think, well, I could use that for such and such and can make something out of it that wasn't intended maybe to be, but that's the best, you know, way to find things. And I have the top of it tied with the chenille stem. You can see that. And I put the hanger on the wreath. I sprayed a little bit of gold on it, not heavy. And I'm going to anchor these 2 points down here a little bit. I could probably tuck them under, because you don't know if you put it on a door and it's swinging, and if you have children or people coming in and out that tend to slam a door, then you know it'll be moving on you and you won't be happy and you have to get on them. And if it's like it used to be, my poor father, "Come on, children, shut the door." You know, it never failed, you know. Or when they shut it so hard, anything that was on it would fall off. So I'm going to tie this one on here. I'll hide it where it's tied. The main thing is, of course, I don't want people to see the mechanics. Give it a little tie right there. Some of them I tucked under, and I think they'll be fine tucked under. I'll hold it up so you can see it. I just sprayed my secret weapon, and so my throat's a little. See, and I took these little magnolia leaves and trimmed them up a little at the ends, took a little stem off and everything, and used this hemlock. And I tied them with wire before I glued them on, because I gave them more a basis for support. And support of what you're going to put on it, which is what really is important for it to hold up the way you want, to look the way you want. I tried to glue it on directly, but I think it was a little damp. If it's damp, forget it. The glue won't hold. Then I made 2 little swags just by taking pieces of hemlock and bunching them in my hands. That's all I did. Cut them off, just bunched them in 2 little bunches. Now I'm going to put them together like so. This is not hard. Of course, my hands are used to it, so they're tough. I'm just wiring it tight so that it will not come apart if it's windy, if it's the door is slamming, whatever is happening. Because you don't want to go to all the work and have it fall apart, because then you get very discouraged and say, "I'm never doing that again." Well, I don't like that. If you first fail, try again. That's what my motto is. See, okay. I'm going to attach that up top like that. Then I'm going to, before I attach it, I'm going to get my ribbon together here. I try to encourage people, if you have a black door, if you have a dark green door, you cannot put an all dark green wreath on it, even if you put a colorful bow. In the daytime, you can make out, but at night, you can't. It just fades into the dark. So you have to be sure that you come up with something that makes it stand out and reflects light. That's a really important thing. Now, here I go with the ribbon. I hear everybody cringing. And I do have tremendous strength in my hands because of all these years. So, you know, you have to build that up. But I French cut it, And I don't want a streamer like this. So I'm starting with the length that I do want, which is about like that. Now I press it together. This is pretty thick ribbon. And pleat it between my thumb and my index finger, just like that. Then I make my loop, straighten it out, twist it around again. Now this is not the same on both sides, so you have to twist it, but I always twist it to get that poofier look. So the ribbon stands up. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's nice to see you all. That was the hardest part, not having the audience, you know, some of them could ask me questions, but I think it was kind of like, do we not, you know, but you know, this is nice to have people back. And I think they're still online as well. Right, Lindsay? Yes, because I had people asking that question. Okay. And we really appreciate it because it's been a rough year for especially museums and nonprofits like that have had to somehow navigate these waters that we've never faced before. And we hope we never face again. But we came through it. And believe you me, we complain and we moan and we groan and we, you know, bad mouth this and bad mouth that about how our government does things. But I was just in England in September. They have not gotten any boosters. Yeah, they've had their first 2 shots, but many have no boosters yet. And why do you think that is? Those countries don't have the money resources we have. That's exactly why. And there are countries that still, well, China don't have people all inoculated the first time, you know, and here we are moaning and groaning and complaining. And, you know, and then I saw the price of petrol. The cheapest I saw was $16.99 a liter, all the way up to like $19.99 a liter. But British people, many of them do not own cars and they walk. They have fabulous public transportation because they're much smaller than we are. I grant that. But they look healthier because they're walking all the time. I can tell you that. It's the truth. But I took this right before I left to go. And, you know, I've been very careful, and stayed very healthy. And I, in the beginning of this COVID mess, I was watching something one Sunday morning, and it was an etymologist, a young doctor on, and he was talking about an antiseptic nasal spray. Well, I couldn't find it, but I finally found it online, and I ordered it. And he was talking about how he used it every day before he left, and he'd used it again during the day. Just spray it up in your nose. It's an antiseptic, and it lasted so many hours because they knew then that it was definitely going in your airways. Sometimes eyes, but most of the time the nose and the mouth. And he said, you know, and I said something to a doctor I know well, and he said, yeah. And he said, gargle before you leave home with an antiseptic mouthwash like Listerine, or, you know, and when you get home, because that will kill those live germs in your throat. And if you breathe it in, it kind of goes up your nose. Well, right before that from England, I was thinking, oh, we're going to be in tons of people. And I've had all my boosters, I've had everything, but I found these at Walmart in a package of 2 in the mouthwash aisle. And they just put them to your mouth. You breathe them in, you can feel it going up your nasal passage. And we were on, of course, we were flying, we were in cars, we were on trains, we were on underground, we were on boats, both of us fine, no problems. But I'd say get the spray out. We sprayed those things, and we wore masks some, but not all the time. You know, on underground we did things like that. But you know, we had no problems whatsoever. And you know, I remember my grandparents were very healthy. What did they use their whole life? Listerine. That was the big thing back then. You know, and so I thought, well, you know, it can't hurt you, so you might as well try it. That's what I say in this climate. And I know a lot of people boo-hoo the doctors, but I don't. I know some of these etymologists spent their whole lives dedicated to this research and studying, and some of them 40, 50 years. Yeah, they know a whole lot more than I do, than I would ever know, no matter what I do. So I go for the knowledge, not the rumor. See how I tied that on? Very simply. Now I'm going to put this on. But I'm also going to put. Not much. It depends, you have to sacrifice sometimes for some things. This one isn't shedding too badly, but I'm handling it, so I'll probably have some on me. I mean, it's got a little bit on my hands, but it'll wipe off. Yeah, be careful. I just tell people, be careful. I've done it so long, around your eyes, because glitter is sharp when it gets in the eyes. It's like glass. You don't want to hurt your eyes. And I've handled it for years and years, and a couple of times I've had something get in there, but I've never had a problem. I always usually try to keep an eye wash at home with an eye cup. Just wash it out. It's fine. No, once you spray it, it won't have that iridescence. That coating, takes away the shine. At least I haven't found anything that won't do that. So I'm gonna turn it over so that you see that part, see it with that on it. Okay. Now I'm going to embellish the center a little bit, and the center of the little doodad. These are cut by the college off the campus. Yeah, thank goodness they do that part for me because of time, especially, when I started this, I was working full time, and I mean full time, 16 hours, this time of year, 16, 17 hours a day or more, 7 days a week. So I had a lot of time for getting out and getting stuff. And they, just kept it up over the years, just cutting for me. So I didn't have that part to do too. Because this week I was really busy because, of course, I always say it's the Christmas rush, November 30th, we've got to get out there. My gosh, it's going to be Christmas Day tomorrow and we won't be ready. That's one thing I love about England. They're not like that. They're like fresh, even in department stores. In Fordham and Mason, it's gorgeous. The Ritz, all those places, they go big time, and the lights. Oh, I have on my cell phone a picture of Regent Street, and they have these magnificent, I've never seen them like it, angels in flight, and they're huge, all in white lights, all across the streets. I mean, it's just breathtaking. But, I remind people that years ago, people did not decorate a month in advance. Years and years ago, in colonial times, they didn't have heat like we do, maybe 40-some degrees probably in their house. And so that's why fresh apples held up, but they didn't decorate until a couple days before Christmas. It wasn't all this, frenzy that Christmas is going to pass us by and we're not going to be ready, I do all fresh in front of my little house, but I don't do it probably till next weekend. I hope I'll have time next weekend. I'll get it up, but I keep it up until after the 12th night. At least last year I had it up during that snowstorm. It looked so pretty, but it's still fresh because I don't put it up the day after Thanksgiving. You cannot go out here and buy this stuff this fresh stuff, garland and wreaths that come in before Thanksgiving and they're going to be alive. It isn't going to happen because this stuff was cut weeks ahead and made and shipped. It's not necessarily in temperature control. If it's cold, then it is, but if it's not, it isn't. It doesn't see a drop of water unless it rains on it. So, do the math. You can figure this out. I saw some of it that was drying out when it just came in. I thought, oh my gosh. And if I see somebody looking at it, I'll say, don't get that one. It's terrible. Dig down if you have to, and then take it home and spray it down and leave it out in the cold for a while. Because it's just not going to hold up. And they think it's something they did. It isn't anything they did. See how I covered that center? Okay. I'm going to decorate the little center here. And I'm always buying little ornaments and things wherever I see them. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I figure I'll find something. And I like glass. I do not like plastic. The glass to me shine much better. There's enough fake in this world. I don't. Yeah, I like the real deal.
So Jan, where do we get Oasis now that we no longer?
Well, if you, a lot of them don't sell the Oasis brand because it's a little pricier, but they sell off brands. And Wegmans sells it pretty quickly. It's not I think they have it in a bag or something, but you want to watch its shelf that's been stored on a shelf because they don't like fluorescent lighting with cellophane around them. And you'll notice they turn like a light goldy brown. They've been there a while. And I've explained this before. It's a cellular structured product chemically, and those cells are dead. They're never absorbing water again. Just like if you keep a piece for a long time and try to reuse it, don't keep it wet and cold, same thing happens. Those cells die, and you put it in water, it keeps popping up, because it won't absorb the water, because it's technically dead. So of course, I always had it in by the cases, but I never stored it because it is a carcinogen. And when we get a case in, I might have one extra case stored somewhere, not in the workroom where we were. I wouldn't do that. And people say, oh, you should get 10 cases. I said, yeah, I could, but I don't have a place to store it where humans aren't. And I'm not doing that. Saving $3 or $2 isn't worth it to me. Come on. I'm worth more. My people working for me are worth more. So when you opened it, the case, because there's 48 blocks of case, we opened them outside, opened up all the flaps and left it out there for like 15, 20 minutes. So someone can escape that box. Because my salesman told me that we knew each other for years and years when I first went in business. He was young too. That they told him once they come in on truck trailer loads of Oasis product to the wholesalers, that they would take them off the truck and leave them on the dock for a while, just to breathe through the cardboard even, because so much of it's concentrated. But the Garden Club of Virginia is really trying to get away from it because it is a carcinogen. It is very hard to biodegrade because it's a foam product. And so we're working on other ways. We're going back to the way we used to do it, chicken wire and so forth, and deep water. I prefer flowers in deep water and glass. I brought a glass container to show the secret of how to keep it from falling out, because you can see the water level, and a lot of flowers like hydrangeas prefer deep water. Gerbers prefer deep water. They don't like foam, so they don't last as long in foam because the foam goes up that stem, but it brings water, but it clogs. Those hollow stems like Gerbers want the water to come up, not the foam. Like daffodils, they do better in water. And I'm gonna finish this and I'll turn it over. But it's important to know something about the products, the properties of these products, because you can get around some of this, but you have to be careful. And I try to be really careful. Once we put it in water, we would keep a tub by the sink station filled with it all the time. Then it dissipates that it's out in the air while it's wet in the water. So we would fill that up and work with it from there. And but as the years went by, we used less and less. There's certain things we had to use it for. I'm on the National Cathedrals Flower Guild. We have to use it because our stuff has to be so big. I was doing Thanksgiving, the altar, and the altar is huge. The altar is 1/10 of a mile from the front door. So this stuff's big. You can't tell that by the TV, but I had these big containers like this, and we stacked them so I could get height. And of course the cross is really high, and the sticks themselves are about like this. I can't even lift them, and then with the candles. So you have a lot of height, and you have to work with a ladder on stone and marble. Yeah, that's all the same color. So we've had quite a few incidents, I hate to tell you. So we have to wear shoes that are good, and you have to be really careful not to fall off one of those, because it's tiered in levels. And with it all being the same color, they try to put tape down for us and everything, but when you're looking at something, you're standing going back from it to see how, and you forget. So we're constantly saying, be careful, don't, but I love it because it's the scale of, it's just so different. Well, right, you've got to, or you could take some magnolia leaves and spray them gold or silver or whatever and back the greenery with that, which would make the greenery pop out. But you just can't put the dark against the dark and get a lot of color, especially at night. You're not going to see it at night. I was going by somebody's house and I could see the wreaths were pretty, but the only thing I could see was the ribbon. And that was the reason, because that dark door was so dark. And I was telling y'all, Thursday, I decorated the Mary Washington Monument for Christmas. I don't know that's ever been done, but I think it should always be done. I'm on a campaign. This is the first monument to a woman in the United States, the tallest monument to a woman in the United States, and the only monument to a woman in the United States paid for completely by women. Yeah. And why isn't it getting more attention? Why, how many people know that? How many school children are told that? How many teachers know that? We don't promote it like we should. So I'm on another campaign and I said, Mary should be decorated for Christmas and her birthday should be a celebration. The mother of the father of our country. Washington Avenue, yes. And her daughter lived at Kenmore. And so her grandchildren were at Kenmore. And she would go and get the children and walk over to Meditation Hill that sits up on and read to those children on the side of that hill. Wonderful. I mean, I think we could even coordinate something with the library to get a program in the summer months, maybe, taking the children over and reading to them. And I know this is the generation of entertainment. So we have to come up with ways to make it more entertaining to get people to pay attention. But, we have to set the stage for this. And so I'm really encouraging, what we can do to make that more visible and for the community to recognize these things about it that are so unique. I said, it's a jewel in our crown. It's not a thorn in our side. Why aren't we out there promoting that in this community? Yes.
The local VAR has finally gotten a commemorative plaque.
Yes, it just got put up, I think.
It's gonna be put up, I think, the 21st of December.
Well, there's a plaque that just got put up the other day, sitting to the right, and it was staked because I knew it was just put up because they had it staked and, caution tape. So I don't know if that's it, but I didn't have time to go read it because it was getting dark and I was trying to get the decorations up. And then someone asked me last night, what was the plaque that had just been put up there? And I said, I'm ashamed to tell you, but I did not have time Thursday it was getting dark to read it, but I will.
Maybe it's there, but it's gonna be the dedication.
Dedication, probably, yes.
And there's a ceremony going on.
Good. Will be nicely decorated. I see how I did it. But another good friend of mine, Alma Withers, we've been talking about it. We talking about, wouldn't it be lovely up on the grounds by the caretaker's cottage? How many of you have ever walked up to it? Have you read the plaques on the front of it? On the cottage itself, as you go up the front door, all the bronze plaques, 2 women. That caretaker's cottage, in my opinion, and I think it's legal, the legal basis too, is it should never be separated from that monument. They were built to be together for a purpose. Yeah, I know money, money, money. That's all I ever hear. Well, it takes so much money. Well, there's ways to do that, and I have some ideas. Not everybody wants to listen, but too bad. I'm going to tell them what I think anyway. We have historic preservation staff like Lindsay, who can't afford to rent something in Fredericksburg. Historic preservation, they don't make a lot of money. They do it for the love of history. They're not in IT, they're not in this and that, and can demand big salaries. So they can't afford to live in downtown Fredericksburg. So they're traveling to Caroline County. Lindsay has to live up north with her partner and have to commute. I thought, You know, here they are, historic preservation, really care about these old places. They're like me. I live in an 1850 little saltbox house. I don't need all this fandangled modern stuff. I don't care about it. You know, it doesn't matter to me. I like old. They love old. That's why they're into history. You know, put a couple of them in there and let them have it as their residence and, you know, draw up some type of contract for a very inexpensive, reasonable rent that they commit so many hours a month to the Mary Washington Monument. Go out there on Saturdays or Sundays and talk to the tourists and, you know, bring their education that they have. You know, gee, and there's several other places in town that could do that too. And we'd have some living history there. And you've got to have that. You're not going to attract these people today without someone there with knowledge sometimes to talk to people. It's just not going to happen. I can tell you that right now, you know. And if you wanted somebody there, you want somebody there that's a history person, you know, it's qualified to talk about it and loves it. Because if you go to some of these wonderful monuments, the Park Service, God bless them. So the guys who work up at like the Lincoln Memorial, so into it. They know their history about Lincoln. They know how to answer the questions. They know how to bring it to life. That we don't have that ability because it's not our educational background. But, you know, same thing at Hyde Park, New York. I was so impressed with this Park Service at Franklin Delano Roosevelt's estate and library. Oh my gosh, you know, you could just feel how passionate they were about it. And it just makes it all come alive to us. So we as a community have to think about some of these things and get together and say, hey, what are we doing here? I refuse. I'm gonna let it die on my watch, you know, if I can help it, but I've got that, hope I have more time, but you know, knock on some wood somewhere. Been fortunate, but pardon. What? Yeah, okay, honey. Lindsay's saying, go, Jan, go, you know, but I just don't think anybody, I don't think that they purposely did, they just haven't thought about it. Well, it was owned or was originally owned by George Washington, not George Washington, but Mary Washington Foundation or whatever it was. Do you remember where it goes back? Mhm. Right. Right. And see, Kenmore rented it for years, historic Kenmore Estate, for $1 a year. And the director lived in it. And he didn't have family or anything, so it was perfect. The yard was gorgeous. Now it's shambles. Shambles. A lot of the stuff has been not taken care of, so it needs completely revitalization because of that. But so the city finally, the Kenmore didn't want it anymore, so they turned it back to the city. And of course, it needed a lot of repairs and everything. Well, it's old, it's stone. Come on, y'all. And then I hear, well, they need to modernize this, and you talk about all this swanky bathroom, swanky kitchen. I'm thinking, really? Not everybody has to have that. Some people just don't care about it, especially people in history. They like a little atmosphere of old. That's why they chose history. So it was going to cost this, it's going to cost that, and blah, 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 you know. Yeah, if you take that approach, it probably will cost that. See how I'm decorating that up? But, you know, it doesn't have to cost that. You know, come on, people. Get a little creative. But I don't know what's going to happen. They're talking about putting offices in it for the Mary Washington, is it the Mary Washington Foundation? Yes. Well, a couple of years ago, if you all remember, right around the beginning of COVID, they had the big idea the cities will sell it. Yeah, sell it, but they didn't investigate the legalities. And several lawyers who knew said that ain't going to happen because the way it was set up, you cannot sell it. And then I was walking and I would walk up there and I'm reading those plaques and I'm thinking, sell it? Are we crazy? We're selling our history. We're selling what these women, you know, gave their blood, sweat, and tears to build. Now, who's going to live up there? You cannot put a fence. If you had children or pets and you've got tourists coming and going, what? That makes no sense to me. No sense whatsoever. So somebody didn't think that whole idea out. And then there was, some against, some for, and it's been an uproar for what, 2 years, 3 years? It's been going on for a while. Yeah. Yeah. That old St. James house has been sitting. Another one. And it used to have somebody living in it. Yes. Yeah. 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 And we had someone living in it for years. Beautiful little property. But with someone living in it that cares about it, it's a whole lot better than an office. And someone who living in it is a history buff and a history student is a whole lot better than an office. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. And I'm like, come on, y'all. Oh, good. Yes. Yes. Because I knew them when he would come. Yeah. It just makes sense to me in communities that you do things like that. You work together, especially with like historic preservation majors that work at these sites that don't make those big salaries. And they're aware of that. Come on, they can't be that, in the backwoods, that. And if you don't live in Fredericksburg, you probably don't realize it, but the rents are crazy, crazy. And forget buying something. Gee, right, Lindsay? And then I thought this would be really cute to come off of here. And I think I'll embellish them real quick and then I'll tie them on. But I want you to see how cute that looks. It's really not, I think I bought this at a thrift place, this grapevine wreath, maybe at, Goodwill or something, or Salvation Army. But there's plenty of grapevine growing around too that needs to be cut. Let's see, I'm going to tie it to that, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. Put a little bit. Yes. Well, yes, my Cutco right here. Probably have bought 15, 20 pairs of them over the years. We lose them, when you got all that stuff on the table and people scrape it off. But nothing cuts good ribbon but this, or fine fabric, because these are steel. They cannot be polished by people who are sharpened by people locally. You send them back to Cutco, they send you a brand new pair. No questions asked. They're guaranteed for life. And I know that's a fact because I've done it, and they're so nice. So they're expensive, but you know what? My parents always said, get what you pay for. And if you want something of high quality, and they are high quality, because the other scissors that we buy are not steel. Well, I have a lot of it from when I was in business. And one of the companies I dealt with enough, I still get ribbon from them. Good luck. For some reason, we are a desert of quality. And that I don't mean that to be ugly. I'm telling you the daggone truth. Quality greenery, artificial permanent greenery has come a long way. Yes, it's expensive if it's good, but it'll last for years. It doesn't fade. It doesn't, this expensive ribbon. Been out in front of my house, the plaid, for a couple of years. I'm using the same ribbon over. It never fades, ever. That tells you the quality. And same way with high-end greenery and berries. And we use some at the cathedral. And I told the director, I said, I think I'm going to go to Atlanta. She said, oh, Jana, we need some new stuff because they've been using it for years. And a lot of them have stem wrap on them because they are very high quality when there's wrap stems. And she said, we're wearing them out because we've used them so many years, putting them down in Oasis. And I said, well, we'll just have to look and I can get us some more. But you can't find anywhere retail because not in Fredericksburg. There are some nice stores that do sell it. Well, probably there might be somebody in Richmond. I have to research that. I think there's a few down there, maybe. Middleburg, Maybe there's some gift shops there might sell it. There might be somebody in Williamsburg, but I don't get it. There's a lot of nice homes in Fredericksburg. They all want cheap. I can't believe it. You're living in a $1 million house and you're going to the five and dime. I mean, I just don't get it. Yes, it's Dee Stevens, and there's two sisters. Yes. Yes. But high end right there. Quality. They know quality. And they're wonderful. I met them the first year they were at Market, and they were in a temporary area. And I saw the ribbon. I was like, oh my gosh, all these silk plaids. And then I met the two sisters, love them. And we just hit it off. We're friends. Just wonderful. And this one sister, the younger sister, goes to Hong Kong, stays there about half a year because that's where the ribbon is made. And she has to regulate color, and she does design work. And the other sister, they're from Oklahoma originally. And just nice they can be. But they said they noticed that too. There was no, we have Lion Ribbon, which is a good company. Ofray, they bought out everything Lion has, so they own Ofray now. But they never had the plaids like that in silk. But they have a lot of good ribbon too. But Maryland, there was one in Virginia, but I don't know if it's still here. Harrisonburg or someplace, I can't remember. I should know, but I can't tell you for sure. They usually ship from Maryland, because I was a big customer of theirs. And I just always, even from a child, I gravitated to nice things, beer, pocketbook, and champagne taste. And I like nice things, and I noticed, these things hold up better. They look better. I mean, I have things I've had my whole life. Since I was a kid, I started buying stuff. And, that's what my parents said, well, you buy good, like a Harris tweed coat, and you could be buried in it 100 years later. I mean, that's a daggone truth, isn't it? And I wanted a Harris tweed coat when I was in high school. And my father said, all right, Daddy, I want a Harris tweed coat. That's all I want. So then he said, well, I got the Harris tweed coat. And then I said, Daddy, now I want gold suede shoes to wear with my Harris tweed coat, because it had a gold velvet collar. But my father he liked fashion. He liked his girls to look good. He said, okay, honey, well, where do you think we're going to get those? I said, I don't know. And then I said, I want a pair of olive green, grosgrain, Scotch grain, whatever, cocoa grain, Scotch grain Weejuns. And he said, okay. And Weejuns were huge when I was in school. I don't know if anybody knows what they are anymore. So he said, okay, honey, where are you going to find those? I said, I don't know. We went to Richmond, and we're in downtown Richmond. We went a couple places, and Daddy said, I think we need to cut to the chase here. Let's just go to Montaldo's, which is gone now. And I said, okay, Daddy. So we went to Montaldo's, and he said, you tell a lady what you want. So I told her, oh, yes. Got them both right there. Okay, I got to hurry here. Talking too much. This one's a longer one. Might have to finish it. Then I bring the ribbon through the vine like that. I'm just going to hang it a little bit below, not too far below, because I don't want it to swing too crazily. But some doors, it depends on the house, how big your house is. If you have a great big frontage on your house, you don't want a teeny tiny thing on the door, because it's just disproportioned. And I'll look at houses and I'll go, oh my gosh, got this big thing on this monstrous house. The house just swallows it up. You might as well use nothing. You have to put something on there in proportion to the size of the house. It's just a weight thing with it. The human eye can usually tell something's wrong. They might not know what it is. Might be the color isn't a good weight for it or something, but your human eye will kind of say, something's not right about that. Now this one I'm going to do lower. I'm just gonna do a couple little things on it. I'll just do one, just to show you. You could do more. And I'll speed up here. You got, uh-huh, uh-huh. Good ribbon. Right. Yeah, because if you find it, it's wonderful. I mean, I remember when I found them at market, I was so happy. Oh, I felt like the whole trip was worth it. Just finding somebody that was so nice. Mm-hmm. Yes, some are and some aren't. Some just don't have the staff, and it's just so hard because they're so, their inventory fluctuates fast because they don't have that kind of money to be an Amazon inventory where they have tons of it. I'm flushing today because I had shots in my knees Thursday. So I look like Rudolph, but it'll go away soon. But I've got to have a knee replacement very soon. But that's okay. I'm happy. You know what? We could be in an era they couldn't get knee replacements. They just had to suffer for the rest of their life and have a hard time walking. We are really blessed. And so I'm just anxious to get on with the show, get it over with. And I said, how long do you think? And they looked at me and said, well, normally 3 months. You won't be 3 months. I said, okay, got it. He said, you complain the least if anybody comes in here and your both knees are bad. Because I said this right knee had been really killing me worse than the left knee. And they say they both look the same. I just don't wonder why. And she said, well, they look the same on an x-ray. That's not looking inside. Then she looked at the knee this time and she said, I think August is when I had the last one. She said, oh, I see. Can you see what I see? And I'm looking at him like, no. And she said, that side of your knee is caving in. It's ready. So as soon as you are, I said, well, I'm ready. I'm not waiting. I don't see that point at all. I'm 72 in good health. I got things to do and places to go. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. And you could have something else happen. And I said, my other knee, I don't want it to give out because it's going to have to help rehabilitate that knee. So I said, this chick's ready to go. Okay, so then when you get it on the door, of course, you get them straight. Let's see, let them hang down. Let me put it over here. Yes. Somebody can take it home.
The first one.
Oh, I am?
Yep.
Okay.
You get to call a number.
Okay. This one's going to go to
Hold on. Okay, ready? Go ahead.
B as, no, 8. 8347663. Oh my gosh. Oh, great. Okay, I'm going to do these two little guys really quick because I got to move ahead here. Mhm. I bought these little snowman mugs. I thought they were so cute. Target. Target has some cute things at a reasonable price. Where's that? And pretty better quality than some other less expensive stores. And these bells I got at Target. Martha Stewart. I'm just gonna put a little bit of greens in them. And I like to take things to people at Christmas that a lot of them don't have the energy or the physical ability to decorate a lot themselves anymore. So little things, and they enjoy them and keep them till they're toasty dead. Don't want to throw them away. And sometimes I just leave them on the porch. They probably don't, some people guess, but if they don't know me very well, they don't know. And they're so tickled. Oh gosh, I mean, this one little lady, she's almost 100. And the caregiver said, oh no, she wouldn't let them throw it away. She kept it in April. She still had the Boxwood Christmas tree decorated. I know, she was so cute. She passed away, she was 98, I think. during COVID. She passed away. And that's why Charlie's not here today. His mother, who I call Mama affectionately, is 94. And, she's kind of winding down, but she's, doing okay. And he's dedicated to her care. She lives at home still, and her sons take care of her, like the Queen of England, maybe better. I'm not sure. Beginning to wonder. I don't even know if the Queen had that much attention, but let me tell you, they're dedicated. So I told Charlie, and his older brother had to go to the hospital this week, and it's just him. I said, you stay home. I'm okay. He said, I feel bad. I can't help you. I said, that's all right. I was one of their shoppers during the COVID, because of course nobody wouldn't let anybody hardly in, and you had to have masks on. And I was telling the ladies up here, some people got angry. I thought, really? Too bad, so sad. I said, mark them off the list. Because if they don't understand a 92-year-old trying to protect her from COVID, then tough. Who cares? I'm over that. Like my little great nieces and nephews said, I said, do you all mind wearing masks to school? They looked at me like, why would we mind that? Out of the mouths of babies. No, we don't mind if we can protect other people and ourselves. It's not bad, Auntie. It's no problem. I said, well, that's the way Auntie feels too. Doesn't bother me one bit. And they said, no, we want to do it. Yeah. And everybody else giving the airline people all kinds of, I have no patience. Spoiled Americans. That's what we look like to the other countries. Yeah. We want our way or the highway. Well, you can jump out that plane because they're going to put you off, and you may never be flying again. So you're going to be on the highway, honking and passing us without using your signals and everything else because they're entitled. Believe me, I can pick them out. Woo. Yes. Now this is easy though. It stays really well, and you wouldn't have to water it more than once a week. Put it in the sink, just let a slow drip into it for a little bit, 5 minutes or something, and that's plenty. See, I'm making a little tree shape, just little and sweet, and sometimes if people are in nursing homes or someplace, they don't have a lot of room. So you have to be aware of that and make them something that they can keep by their bed. They want it close to them. I found that to be the case. As close as I can get something to them, that's what they want. Some of it so they can see it all the time. Some of it is so that nobody can take it from them. Isn't that awful? I've got that right here, Green Glow. It's a plant-based product. And I was in England when the Queen died. I get people asking me that. And I was on NBC with Lester, which I was humiliated because I'd been in Kew Gardens all day. We came back to Windsor, my hair was a wreck. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, once they interviewed me after we knew she died, and I said, oh, they're not going to put that on anything. Because they asked me, was I from the United States? And I said, oh, yes. And I said, you don't have to worry. That's not going anywhere because they just want British people. Well, I don't know how all this stuff works, but these freelancers who run out all over the place, interviewing, carrying on when this stuff first happens, they send it to different markets. Well, I guess because I was from the United States, they sent me to the United States, the American market, instead of a British person. I couldn't figure it out. So I thought nothing of it. We went home, went back to our hotel, of course, watching the BBC religiously, and went to bed. And at 12:30, my phone rang. It was a neighbor up the street. Jan, are you in England? I said, yeah. And she said, oh my gosh. And she yells to her husband, that is Jan, because they were in a big fight. And he said, I don't care what you say. That looks like Jan. That sounds like Jan. That has got to be Jan. And we were laughing, and I said, oh, thank God that was on Fox. Oh, I said, oh, thank God it wasn't Lester. And she's laughing. I said, oh, my hair, from the rain and everything. Oh, you look fine. So then about, I guess it was 1:15, my phone rang again. Hadn't rung the whole time. We already been there 5 days. My niece in St. Louis. And I realized later that day that she had tried to call me, but it's 6 hours difference in St. Louis and Virginia. So I didn't know what she was calling about. I know she's calling to see how we were doing. That's what I figured in England. But I didn't call her back because of the time difference. And I was like, oh, I can't call on this time. It's too, she's busy with dinner. Well, she said she was getting ready to fix dinner, and her son says, Mom, I'm turning on NBC. I want to see what time the football game comes on. And she was like, okay. He turns it on. Just at that moment, Lester comes on. And he said, he talks about, the Queen has just died, and they show the Union Jack in the background and one of the palaces, and and he's talking, and suddenly, boom, there's Auntie. And my nephew, they didn't know I was in England. My nephew starts screaming, Mom, it's Auntie. She goes, she was just telling him she'd tried to call me. She's going, how did she get here that fast? And so she's breathless on the phone. Auntie, I just saw you. I'm Lester Holt. How did you get there so fast? I'm trying to do the calculations. And I said, calm down. She was so up, carrying on, she wouldn't calm down so I could tell her. And finally I said, honey, I would have had to, I couldn't even have owned a Concorde and getting there that fast. Are you kidding me? Honey, look at the time difference and how long it takes to get there. Oh my gosh, Auntie. And I said, well, honey, you didn't know I was in England? She said, no. Then I hear Christian. I think I heard something about that. And they have a son who's on the United States International gymnastics team, and they just taken him to New Jersey to live with a host family for better coaching. And you get to that level, it's her only choice, So she had so much going on with all that going on. And then she said, oh, I said, I thought you knew it. She said, no, I didn't know you were already there. And when I called, I just wanted to see, I knew you'd be upset about the Queen. And I said, oh, honey, yeah, I'm here. But I can't believe it. I said, oh, no, my hair. And so I gave the phone to my girlfriend, Shirley, and she's laughing, And I said, Shirley, I was on with Lester Holt, and my hair looked terrible. Because I think Lester's the top. And we were all laughing, but she was hysterical. And then my phone was lighting up like crazy with messages. And Heather and Jason, who bought my old house and I live next door to, they were going downtown for dinner. Here comes Jerry Ullman, who's a dear friend, walking up the street with his dog. Jan's on NBC with Lester Holt, talking about the Queen. And they're like, what? So they're going by, it was warm, they're going by restaurants with people sitting on the street. And, a lot of people downtown. They're going, we just heard Jan was on NBC. And they're all on their phones and picking it up. And Jason told Heather, we got to get home. I got to turn this on. It was hysterical. I just couldn't believe I loved her. She was a wonderful example of dedication to a position in this world. And I'm glad I was there because even though I knew it would be that way, seeing is much better than just being in the midst of it. We went the next day on Friday, everybody was coming to Windsor. Children, adults, everybody, people that were in wheelchairs, everybody had flowers. I don't care who they were. The little children had flowers, the fathers had flowers. Everybody had 2 or 3 dogs with them. So everybody brings their dogs in England everywhere, laying them at the Great Walk gates. So I took flowers over there Friday. I had to Friday evening. It was just beautiful. The most sincere admiration and love I've ever seen on display at that level for anyone. It really made your heart feel good. And then on Saturday, we had tickets at Highclere Castle. So we came back from Highclere. There was all kinds of commotion up near the gates at the front of the castle where you normally go in. And I made friends with these 2 security people, young men that were so nice. And I said, something going on. He went, and I said, somebody. And then I said, and I said, great walk. I said, come on, Charlie. So we walked around there. Just as we got there, we could see the Range Rovers coming down, the gates open. That young woman was born to be a queen, Kate. Oh my gosh, so lovely. They got out of the car and they walked over to one side. Then suddenly they came over to our side. They went directly to the elderly, people in wheelchairs, It was just beautiful. Little children, I mean, thanking everybody for coming to pay their respects. They were just overwhelmed. They said, they knew it would be, but it was just, and it was beautiful. And then when we left Windsor, we went to the Isle of Wight for a couple of days because I wanted to go to the donkey sanctuary. Donkeys are my new passion. And and then we came back into Westminster. So we were really in the throes of it all. And I have never seen anything organized, executed so beautifully in my life. They have it down pat. I mean, even the porta potties were not in your face. The British know how to do it. And people, everybody in line was just, they loved being in line. They were grateful to be in line. They didn't care if it took 24 hours to get where they were going in line. They were there for her. And that was it. They felt honored to be there, able to be there, to pay their respects to that woman, to that great woman. And no matter how many hours, they were all happy. I mean, and the British government organized it beautifully. They had Salvation Army workers out there, Billy Graham crusade workers, bringing them stuff. And you had an armband, depending on which queue you got in, with a certain color and time and all that. And you could go to the bathroom, and, they brought you when it got cold, they were bringing blankets. They had coffee stations. Our hotel had a big hospitality room for the police and security, gratis, just had to take care of them. It was just beautiful. A life experience, I tell you. So we saw William and Kate, and then we came back into England the day they moved her body from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. I forget where we'd been that morning. And I said, come on, let's go. Maybe we'll get lucky. We got over to the Mall, which they say Mall, not Mall. And I figure they know how to say it correctly because they're British and the King's English, not like us. And we could hear them starting to come. If they say it's going to start at what I think they said that day, 2:13 or something, it starts at 2:13. If they say it's going to end at a certain time, it ends. I've never seen anything like it. And here they came. You could hear so we were maybe 10 feet back. We didn't push up. I said, I'm not British. I'm not doing that. Those people have been standing here. But it was beautiful. We could see the casket. We could see, William's head we could see because he was taller. The real tall ones you could see pretty well. But it was beautifully executed. And I felt like they had 2 security people to every person that was there. It was very safe. I always feel safe though there. And they said over 1 million would come into London, and London's a city of 8.5 million. So you can imagine, because they had shut down some of the bridges. Westminster Bridge was completely shut down, just walking. But it was wonderful to see that genuine love. I'll show you how he looks. Isn't he cute? You see, everything in here will stay. And I'll show you what I brought, because I'm careful when I take it to people who maybe are older, and I know they want it to stay for weeks or months, most of them months. I had another neighbor who would take one to a little lady who was in her 90s. She wouldn't let them throw away. It'd be summertime, and they'd be going, we need to throw this out. It's so dead. She said, she said, Jan's problem. She'll send you another one next year. I would meet her when she came down to their house, and she fell in love with my Myrtle May, and Myrtle May and Miss Mac were great friends. So she had a spot in my heart because she just loved my Myrtle May so much, even when she was bad, which she could be. But these are permanent berries, but they're not the type that burst. Another problem. Can't find those either. The ones that always burst, you see the white foam lining, they're not well made, and so they crack open. And these have been, if I've used these and stuff outside, I've never seen them pop, no matter what the weather. Well, yes, I've had a few experiences with my squirrels, but they're my squirrels usually pretty well behaved because I feed them. I give them apples and corn, and and they play with Wilhelmina. They're her great buddies. So they don't really bother too much. Now pumpkins, they love pumpkins. They'll get into those, and so I spray them. I don't deter them really, But if I want to, I'll put that pepper spray on them. And then bulbs, of course, sometimes they go after those. But I haven't had too much trouble because I do feed them. Well, pat daffodils around the tulips. They will not eat daffodils because they're poisonous, and they know. You know, nature's incredible. They know what's poisonous and what isn't. Because somebody said something about birds eating nandina and dying. I said, wait a minute. I've had lots of nandinas in the yard. I've never seen a dead bird yet. And I said that they don't eat stuff that's poisonous. They know. That's nature's way. I mean, there'd be a lot of dead things laying around if they didn't have that intuition. And come on. Okay, now there's your little Christmas tree mug. And this one, I'm just going to do really quick with water, in water, so you can see how easy it is. I'm not putting oasis in it, just going to have some fresh greenery in it. I try to clean off the stems as I go. I got to speed it up here. I hate to go too fast because then y'all don't know what you can't watch me. You don't know how, you can't watch it that fast, but anyway. And the girls were helping me the other day working on the garlands and stuff. I said, girls, just stand back and watch. Y'all cut the greens for me and just watch how I do it. And once you see the technique, then you can learn how to do it faster. But we had to make a lot of it because we did the city cemetery gates. And I put one on the gate that faces William Street that's old. That was the original gate. It's up on the hill where they cut the road. That was the original gate to the city cemetery. And then at the end of the Civil War, these ladies in town formed the LMA, which is the Ladies Memorial Association, and bought over half of the property that was still undeveloped. When you come in the big gates that you see when you dump out on Amelia to Washington Avenue, those big gates, the LMA built those gates and own all the roads. So we own more property than the other. And I'm in the LMA. I was invited, I don't know how many years ago. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. Well, I went to the first meeting and I was the young one, younger one, let's put it that way. I think I was older than they thought, but they needed workers and people that could do some of the stuff that they couldn't do anymore. And I said, oh, sure, I'll do it. So I've been helping anyway, making wreaths and stuff for them. But it's a nice, wonderful organization because those ladies pooled what little money they had and buried the dead. Government didn't bury them. They were Confederates. Regardless of how you feel, I mean, it was a different time. You know, that's all I can say. And these people's husbands, sons, you know, they didn't want them just laying around, so they buried them with whatever money they scraped up, bought that land, and have taken care of it ever since. Some families help, but then families die off. You know, we've been searching for some relatives for the people who are not, you know, military. There are people, families buried in that part too, to see if they'll help us because we prepare all the stones, do everything, all the grass cutting, trimming. We have a good service that does it, but it costs a lot of money for a small organization, but we try to keep it up nice to follow what they did, because what they did was incredible when you think about it. And they didn't have anything. Everything was destroyed at the end of that awful war. But they were still somebody they loved. You know, it was, like I said, a different time. This is like hair quality. Milliner's quality is what I call this. It's a little velvet. And smaller ribbons, not a lot of them come wired. It's harder to do. But I like this velvet. This is real velvet. Milliner's quality velvet is what I call it. You put on hats and nice clothing. And we did see an exhibit in England at Victoria and Albert on the life of Beatrice Potter at Victoria and Albert. Oh, she was a visionary. She was so smart and so creative. So was her brother. their parents were smart in science, and they had an uncle who was some kind of scientist. I can't remember now. And they taught themselves, or he helped them, taxidermy. When something would die, she and her brother would stuff it. That's how she got the anatomy so correct. But she was a little girl when she started, and you just cannot believe some of the drawings and things in there. I'm like 8, 9 years old, looked just like they did when she was grown. And she was her passion. And she went up to the Lake District, fell in love with it. This is when she had started making some money, but she did come from a little money. She was very educated, but she wasn't about money. You know what I mean when I say that. She fell in love with the Lake District, and she decided she wanted to save it. She knew she could visualize what was going to happen. She bought over 20% of it, and all of it is in the trust, National Trust now. Gave it all back to England to preserve. And she married a man from the Lake District, but they never had any children. I don't know how old they were when they got married. And she lived in a humble cottage the rest of her whole life. She's a very humble person. And she spent all of her money on preserving that, because that's how strongly she felt about it. It was a beautiful exhibit. We loved it. They have fabulous exhibits at Victoria and Albert. If you ever go, check out what they've got going on, because they do some wonderful things. Now, this is very simple, just a little holly. And I'm going to, this is fresh, so I'm going to put a little bit of green glow on the holly, which you can immediately tell a difference. Now, this is a 2-for-1. I'm going to let these go together. Aren't they cute? Okay.
And picture.
Okay.
Ready?
8347659. Oh, Denise. Oh, that's my good friend Denise. Oh, Denise has been coming a long time. Denise and I are one of these friendships. We met professionally. Excuse me, I was doing a party for her, and we clicked immediate, right, Denise? And that's the story. The rest of the story, we've been friends ever since. Okay. And you either click or you don't click, but we clicked. I've been that way though my whole life. I have people, you make good friends and you're friends forever. You might not see them for 6 months, but it doesn't matter. Next time you see him, you take right up where you left, I'll do this one because I can do this fast. The cutting, they cut me a lot of nice stuff, but they didn't cut things very tall. So I might have to do a cutting lesson, but I'll make it work. And I've got this in a bucket, just a bucket. I have no oasis in it. And I'm going to show you how to get this stuff to stay in place. You put these greens down in it. Now this would be for outside. Now you could bring it in if you were having an event or something, but I put it by the door, front door, back door, someplace like that, where it would stay cool. But like if I said, if you wanted to bring it in for something, you could, but I put it back out so it'll last a long time. And that's what I do at my house. I always have something out on the side, my back door. No, I haven't got out yet, but it will be. I've got some projects this week, and after I get through that, it'll be time for me. Because I didn't buy them a week ahead of time. I can tell you, I worked hard and I worried about lasting and quality. That's how, gave it the extra mile. And most of my wedding orders didn't come in until Wednesday or Thursday, because I wanted the freshest thing they had, and they get planes every day. So, in the thing, and then care for them. When our flowers came in, they were immediately cleaned, processed, put in the right type of temperature, right type of preservative. I had a cooler that was set at 38 degrees, a big cooler. I invested a lot of money in my cooler because that's where you need to spend the money. My brother-in-law made my work tables $14 a piece with Formica that he bought somewhere, tops, and put wood legs on them. Worked fine. I didn't need stainless steel work tables. I put the money in the places where I felt it really mattered. Those work tables I still had them. I had to get rid of mine. 'Cause I didn't have anywhere to keep it, but I loved them. The kids had written their names on them and underneath them, my nieces, nephews. And then I would make my wedding flowers, start on Thursday, but I usually did all the bouquets, like bridesmaids and brides myself. And usually the brides was the last. They went into that cooler and they stayed in there until time to pack them for delivery. When I say pack them for delivery, I don't mean take them out, throw them in a box with nothing wrapped around them. I've seen that and I can't believe it. How can those people call themselves professional? And you don't want a bridal bouquet rolling around. And it didn't matter to me if it was summer, winter, I don't care what the weather, they were wrapped, cellophane covered, sprayed in containers, each individual, and that's how they left. Because I want them to hold up. And the same thing with the flower arrangements. We made them, the day or two before and kept them in the cooler. And people would tell me they had those arrangements after the wedding for a week or more. Well, they're paying for fresh flowers. They should be getting fresh flowers. That's just the way I felt about it. But you have to work hard because you have to work late in order, if you have a big wedding, to produce all that stuff at the last minute. But that's just the way I prefer to do it. So that's the way I did it. Right, Sharon? Oh, I did Sharon's wedding and both of her daughters' weddings. Well, it depends on the time of year. Tulips do not do well in real hot weather. I mean, even if you can take care of them all you want, but it's just too hot for them. So they flop. So I try to recommend around here, July and August are not a good tulip time. You just have to know your product, what's going to last better. I'll turn this around so you can see how easy this is. See, I stuffed that heavy greens down in there to hold it. There's no oasis. It's a bucket. It's going to be heavy because it's got water in it. A lot of water in it. You just have to fill it, add water to it like once a week. You'd be fine. I've been digging for tall stuff. I've got some here. You just need to clean off the bottoms of these things. Pardon? Oh, I love fall flowers. For weddings or just, well, I love hydrangeas. I love dahlias. Now they're a little more fragile, so you got to handle them properly. There's a rose that I'm just crazy about called Free Spirit. And it's shades of orangey colors and a little bit of pinkish, and it opens fat like a cabbage. But it is not a David Austin variety, which costs $5 or $6 or $7 or $8 per bloom wholesale. Flowers are not cheap. There's nothing cheap anymore. Of course, with they travel. They're traveling from South America, some California, some Europe. There's nothing Canada. A lot of them come from Canada. Very little is coming out of the U.S. anymore, even California. It's been sold off. Either the family, the people raising them got older, and the kids, they don't want anything to do with it. It's too hard to work. Weather conditions, and the property got so valuable. And then marijuana came in. They're selling them to marijuana growers, the greenhouses. So, you have so few, and so you got to bring it from Timbuktu. So, and what people don't understand, because if you're not in business, you don't understand it. People like Wegmans, Giant, they have huge contracts. They contract with the growers, not the wholesalers, the growers. They cut out the middleman and they sign these multi-million-dollar contracts. Most grocery chains, and it's still this way because I asked one of the managers, all the fresh product and flowers and plants are under advertising. So they're not looking for profit, really. They just want to make enough to pay the employees that are just fooling with it because it's an advertising tool. Yeah. So they sell it sometimes cheaper than the wholesalers that provide flowers for us can even buy it. Now, I'm not saying that they sell the best product. It depends on how smart you are. Yeah, because some of them, the lighting can fool you. You got to watch that lighting, especially that black ceiling, because it makes everything look good. But when you get out in the real light, you see all the things that are wrong with it. Let me turn this around, see how fast that can go. Doesn't take any time, and it's down in deep water, and if you keep it cold out by the door or something, it will last and last and last. That I can promise you. Then I'm gonna put a couple big pine cones in it. A friend of mine brought these back from is it Pinehurst, the golf course? Yeah. I said, if you're going down there, let's make this trip worthwhile. Bring me some pine cones. They all just laughed. They said, okay. They pick up the bags of pine cones. My parents were golfers and they would do that. Now I'm going to use a beautiful, just bright red velvet, wired, of course, because it holds up better. But this is good quality. It's not that awful plastic back stuff. Don't buy that. It's cheap and it will be orange before the season's over. That I can promise you. Well, if this is all kept wet, this is all fresh, just cut the last couple of days. These magnolia, that should hold pretty well. The pine should hold. I've got that cedar in there, that'll hold really well. I don't think you'll have any problem if you keep it cool and add water to the bucket for it to last for Christmas well, very, very well. Of course, this is only the 3rd, but that's why I say cold. You know, they don't want to be in a 70-degree home. And if they're in mine, they're not, because it's old and I don't keep it very warm. Everybody comes in, this is so cold. I said, I've got to keep everything else fresh. I don't care about it. Wilhelmina has got a fur coat on. She's okay. A little bit of this, oh, that'll come to me. What is it? Oh, not balsam, but hemlock. Yes. It's big in the Adirondacks. That's what I was trying to remember. Yes, it's not really juniper. It's probably kin to it. It's what I call a farm cedar, but it's in the juniper family, I think, but not as heavy. You know, my friend has a real heavy bush of the real juniper that I get to cut from. I'm working on a little project at a little Episcopal church in King George, St. Paul's, which has a special place in my heart because as a young girl, I grew up at Dahlgren and I would go to St. Paul's a lot with my girlfriends. I wasn't Episcopal, but they didn't care. Nobody cared. And I said, Daddy, I want to go. He said, well, go ahead. I don't care. And, you know, I babysat for a lot of people that belong to that church. And so we're a couple of years ago, the Christmas before the pandemic set in, I was down there doing a program for the garden club and we were going to do St. Paul's for Garden Week. And I was talking to the priest there and I said, would you like for me to come and help them do this in fresh? Because I asked and they said, oh, we used to do it fresh, which I knew, but we don't anymore because we just don't have the people to help. And I said, oh, that's a shame. And when I asked him, he's from England and he'd never seen artificial in church before. And he said, oh, I love it. So I decorated it and all fresh that Christmas. And then I went back the next Christmas. So I was down there and I said, well, we're going to do Christmas. So we got the girls' hand. I said, well, why don't we do a green sale on the Saturday after Christmas? And I'll make stuff and I'll teach y'all how to make stuff and we'll sell arrangements and, you know, whatever. And so a good friend of mine who goes there, Lisa Stewart, Lisa said, okay. So we told Padre, and he said, oh, that's wonderful, Jan. And I said, everything goes to church, of course. So we're having it next Saturday. So I'll be making stuff like a little machine. Because I think we're going to decorate the church on Thursday. Wire. And I'm going to put them on a stick. Because they don't have any stem, of course. And you could just nestle them in here at home. You wouldn't have to do this, but if somebody's transporting it, I could glue them, but I don't want them falling out on your way. And these are from Pinehurst. So if you have a golfer, you can say these came from Pinehurst off the golf course. They'll be so impressed. Yeah, I used to tell mother and daddy, I'd give them a list. And my mother would be like, "Oh," my father said, "Oh, I'll get it, we'll get it for her." He said, "She's got some plans." They bring it all back. You can't find them this big around here. Or these ones I call Texas cones. I love them. And I found those, I think 3 years ago at Lidl for nothing. And they cost a lot. I mean, I've seen them as much as $8, $10 a piece on retail. And at least $5 or $6 a piece wholesale. So they are expensive. Now I'm gonna put some branches in this. Does anybody know what this is? The little katydids on it? River birch. The English use a lot of it with these little katydids after the leaves go off. I love it. They put them in wreaths. I haven't wired that one yet. I got to let them hang off. I just love it. They use very natural deck. They do a lot of holly and, everything's natural over there. They love all this branchy and they do things much simpler, but they're beautiful. They do it all fresh. Wait a minute, I'm not gonna do that this year. No, because I need it for my projects. It's going to a good home for a good cause. I'm doing that and I'm doing this thing for the little church that I'm doing a fundraiser. And I'm doing, stuff for people. I'm not gonna do that till following week because it's too, I want them to last and they're warm in those places. So you can't they gotta have warmth. I can't tell them to turn the heat down at the nursing home. Yeah. But many times if you see somebody has a huge magnolia tree, and I've been advising people what to do. Remember last year, that storm? Horrible on the magnolias. So if they have branches that are coming out real heavy, because the leaves are heavy, you want to trim those off before bad weather. So I've said, if you want to, get your branches trimmed, I'll trim it and use the greenery. And they go, "Oh, great." They don't have to pay somebody to do it. Get a pair of long-handled clippers, but a lot of people don't understand that. And that weight is what pulled them down. It did terrible damage. Oh, I was so upset. The hemlocks next door that've been there forever, and there's not that many huge ones around here. Oh, Jason and Heather were away, and Jason called me. He said, "Jan," they had left 2 days before the storm hit. He said, "How are you?" I said, "Well, I'm fine." I said, "I've been out trying to get the snow off some of those bushes and stuff because I don't want to kill them or break them." And because we had garden week coming, and I was, already carrying on about that. And I went out, and there was huge limbs off those hemlocks. It was just devastating. Then I saw the Bracken Brown Beauty magnolia that I had over in the corner of their yard that I planted years ago. And it had the top out of it. It was so upsetting. I was worried about those poor souls freezing on 95. That was a debacle. And I had a solution. And I said, let's get more women up there that can think. I mean, they're talking about how long it would take to activate the National Guard. National Guard, they were a couple miles from Quantico. They had all these Marines trained in all that. We pay the National Guard, we pay the Marines. What's the daggone difference? And Cohen's daughter dates a young Marine, nicest kid. And I said, "Ryan," he said, "Yeah, we were wondering the same thing. We've got gear, we've got little four-wheelers. We could have at least brought them water and food and, gasoline. For gosh sakes, we're just lucky no one died. That was horrible. That was disgraceful. Come on. They could have been over there in 30 minutes. No, they got more sense. That was just ridiculous. And then friends of mine knew the superintendent of state police for this area. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'll tell you what happened. Richmond fighting with Northern Virginia fighting with Richmond over what to do. Can you imagine? Yeah, I can imagine it. You know, come on, people out there freezing to death, children in the cars, older people in the cars. Phew. If that ain't an emergency, what is? You know, I'm just thinking, poor planning, no planning, I guess. And like he said, we've been telling them for years this is going to happen. And he said, and it isn't over yet. He said, I'm retiring in May. I'm out of here. It's ridiculous. He said, you know, you've got a corridor, one of the busiest corridors in this country, and you've got all this travel on it, and tractor trailers. See, they had jackknifed across the road. You couldn't get anybody off there. And we had a tractor trailer jackknife out in front of my house, stuck against the, where the wall thing goes up for the cemetery on the sidewalk over there, then against the telephone pole on the other side. His back end swung around. He had Alabama license plates. I don't know where he was from, poor guy. He's probably thinking, oh my God, they couldn't get him a wrecker because they were all trying to get up there. I guess big wrecker is what he had to have. He was loaded. So he's out there, and some guy tried to help him. People were trying to help him. They asked me, could I get a board? So I ran in the garage and found a board. That didn't work. The city came finally after hours and put dirt down. That didn't work. Finally, after I don't know how many hours, it was hours and hours. And of course, nobody could get up and down the street. And of course, you know how some of them acted. They were in the middle of this major snowstorm and they're honking their horns and he's stuck. You could see he's stuck. What do you need to know? I mean, the police officer, he's just shaking his head. I said, I don't know how y'all put up with it. You know, come on, people. And I think they finally got him out of there just as it was getting dark. Because they got a big record. Oh boy, this is heavy. Somebody needs help. Oh, I'm gonna put a little shine on the berries. Okay. 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 Let me put it over here
Oh, gosh, okay.
so I can keep going.
Okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
Here's a magic hand.
8347656. Oh gosh.
All right.
And you will need help. Let me see, what am I gonna do? Ah. I've got the box, but I'm gonna throw this together quickly, and then I'm hoping I can get to one more.
Okay.
I'm hoping.
Oh,
I'm gonna do that next, I think, so that I can. And I will explain to him what I was gonna do. I had a Oasis wreath frame that I soaked. I don't know if I left it in the sink. I don't know where I left it. It must have been in the sink or somewhere this morning because I thought about last night and I brought this red cake stand that I don't know where I got it. I think Target years ago, maybe. I don't know. Somewhere. And I had it up on top of a piece of furniture with something on it. And I said, well, I think that cake stand would be pretty. Then I thought, well, I could do several things with it to just show you I'm a collector of lots of stuff. And needless to say, I bought this in an antique shop in Culpeper with the cream and sugar, and it just so happened had a W on it. Isn't it precious? And for a little bit of money, because nobody wants silver, unfortunately. I thought, wouldn't this be cute in the middle of, I was going to green the Oasis wreath up and put it around the bottom and put stuff in it. And then I was in the bathroom and I noticed, where are they? Someone gave me a box, I'll find them, of these little soap roses. Have you seen them? Here they are, made out of soap. And as long as I didn't get them wet, I could tuck them in the greenery. And they have a very soft fragrance. It's not strong at all. Rose fragrance. Wouldn't that be pretty? I thought, oh, that'd be cute. I'll show them how to do it and just put evergreens in the wreath and put a plate under it so that you don't want those. They have a plastic back, but you don't want any water running on your table, of course. Then I also bought this years and years and years ago, probably 40 some. at the little Richard Johnston shop that was downstairs. I don't know how many of you remember it. It sold the most fabulous chocolate chip cookies. I'm trying to think what it was called. It'll come to me. Does anybody remember? She put them on baking sheets and then cut them in squares. Her mother ran the inn. Troll House cookies. And anyway, some artisan in town made those. Isn't it precious? And I bought it. I just loved it. It's got an initial on the end of it. It got a little chip in the roof somehow. I don't know how. And then you can put a little candle under it, and this stuff comes, out of the chimney. It's just adorable. I thought you could even do it. You could switch your things you're showing off. If you had a tea, you could put a teapot on it. You can convert things to other things and use the same decoration, like the little wreath. I'll show you how cute it looks lit. And then you could just lay some greens around the top of it and throw those away. I love tea, so I'm all about teapots and anything tea. Of course, English. I don't drink coffee, never have. People think, oh, you probably drink a lot of coffee. I said, no, I don't drink any coffee. See how cute? Of course, it was dark, you could really see it. It's adorable, lit up. But anyway, that gives you the idea. You put stuff around the bottom, you could do that in Oasis. The wreath forms would hold up on a plate, and then you could take things off. I'm a big collector of stuff. I mean, I have Father Christmases, I have Steiff bears that are Christmas that play music, and way too much stuff. But the kids, I keep threatening my nieces and nephews. So listen, Ani kicks off. Don't you dare put these Steiff bears in a yard sale. Because I'll come back and get you, But they, oh no, Auntie, because when they were born, I made hardly anything. But I've always been, I saved my money. I said, I'm not buying plastic. I'm not buying junk. I want to buy them something that had their whole life. I have the teddy bear my grandfather brought me the day I was born. And I said, they're going to have a good teddy bear. So each one of them got a Steiff bear about this big with the growler in it. David was 50 in November. He still has that bear. It's always on his dresser. And, so he said, don't you worry, Auntie, I'll never let anything happen to it. I love my bear. They talk about their bears. We had his picture done when he was, I think, 4, this drawing little blue suit, with little short pants. My favorite clothes on little children. They have their whole life to dress like an old person. Why in the world are you dressing little ones like old people? You don't see that in England either. They dress like children. And so we had that picture made of him at Judson Smith. He was so sweet, Mr. Jennings. And I had him do it with him holding the bear. So cute, so precious. I said, I don't care about anything else. I just want to have stuff that is a memory. And I have a beautiful wicker, it's from a wicker company in Philadelphia, very old wicker carriage, big wicker carriage with wooden frame, wooden wheels. It's beautiful. Bought it 45 years ago, this coming January, because I remember it well because my father was in the hospital in Richmond, and then he died right after that. And we were going down the street because we were going to go to the hospital, and I yelled at my brother-in-law, stop. He's like, what is it? I said, it's a carriage outside that building. It's really old. And he's like, oh my God, So I go in, and Pat Posh owned the shop. Does anybody remember Pat? She had an antique shop here. She's lovely. She's very good to me. And I didn't have, of course, enough money to buy it outright. I had to put a layaway, but she was very kind to me. She, let me do that. And I bought a lot of stuff from her like that. And my brother-in-law says, what are you going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to put my antique dolls and toys in it. And he said, oh. So when my niece in St. Louis my sister in St. Louis had her second child, they were living out there. And her husband had a christening dress that was made by, his father was 80 when Sarah was born, her grandfather. And that he wore the dress, and other members of his family wore the dress made by his grandmother. So you know how old that dress was. It was beautiful, the workmanship. So I went out to St. Louis and I hand laundered it and ironed it and everything for Sarah's baptism. So I said, I want a picture, because they had a picture of her father in it. I said, I want a picture like that. And my sister said, yeah, that would be wonderful. Her older child was 7 when this child was born. So I was up in Alexandria, doing something because they lived up there before Sarah was born. And I had found this little shop called Why Not? So when Tara was little, I'd buy her clothes there, a little midi dress, sailor dresses. Oh, so I found a rose pink velvet dress with beautiful ivory lace gathered collar and cuffs. And I bought that for her. And I found rose pink ribbon, Swiss ribbon to put in her hair. So I had a portrait done with the carriage, with the baby in the carriage with all these old pillows, and the older one standing by the carriage like she's, taking care of the baby. It hangs over my bed to this day. We all got pictures of it. It's wonderful. I mean, that's what it's all about to me. I mean, I didn't have any money, but I spent it on magic doorknob. Oh my gosh. Oh, they'd order me stuff and they were just wonderful. And my sisters have a lot of those clothes. They saved them. Hopefully somebody will wear them. Maybe they'll all come back. Let's hope. And that's the other thing I saw in England, which I always see, is the school children dressed in their beautiful uniforms. Their hair groomed. They're groomed. Very different from here. Doesn't matter what age they are, they're in uniforms of different kinds. All looking nice and acting nice going down the street. Well, I was raised when you look better, you feel better, and you act better. Okay, America, wake up. We need to, every educator I ask, they go, we're all for them. But they say the parents won't stand for it. And I said, well, in the long run, everybody will tell you that's ever done it. It costs a lot less money. You don't have to argue every morning about what they're going to wear, and maybe they learn how to present themselves. Novel idea, And I said, I got opportunities at the White House to go up to the family quarters, to go see the Queen arrive on the South Lawn in 1976 because of the way I was dressed and groomed. I looked presentable. That just doesn't, they're not going to send you up there in a pair of old ragged jeans, which I wouldn't have worn there in the first place. But, I came from the dark ages, I guess, where my mother, I can hear her now. And where are you going? Well, I don't think so. I don't think that's appropriate. Go get changed. So we go and we got changed, but my nephew, he's so funny. They have one daughter, she's the youngest, and they had homecoming dances. And he said, Auntie, I have never seen anything like my life. I said, what? He said, the way these girls are dressed to go to homecoming, young girls, 14, 15, 16 years old, in dresses that look like they're walking down 14th Street, up to here, as tight as a tick. And I'm thinking, cut down to here. And I see pictures of them and I'm thinking, what are they thinking? What messages are they sending? Oh my gosh. There was a friend that put their daughter's picture on. She had a beautiful little dress, very ingenue, very appropriate, lovely. And everybody was commenting, what a pretty dress. She looks so sweet and so lovely. I'm thinking, yeah, so refreshing, And then everybody wonders what's happened. And Jeff goes, my daughter's never dressing like that. And I said, I sure hope not. Because I don't want, if I see it, I'm going to have a fit. He said, no, Auntie, that's not going to happen. I said, good.
I heard quote that this woman, Christian group, she was speaking, you don't want anything you can see through, see down, or see
Up. Good idea. Well, after the funeral in England, there were comments, and this lady in England who I guess is so much on, how to dress and everything. She said, well, if you think about it, if you look at them, look at Kate, she's only 40 years old, how they're dressed. She said, they dress classic. They don't have a skirt up above their knee. And if you go through history and you pull out a picture today of Jackie Kennedy in 1960, she could walk out the door now and be in style because she was classic and appropriate. Another key word, for what you're doing. But yeah, it was refreshing to see, like they said, to see everybody in hats and gloves. And every time I wear hats and gloves to church, it's unbelievable. And the men are the big ones. They go, oh, you look so pretty. You look so nice. You know, like I did some miracle, you know, and I'm thinking, well, you know, it's not, you don't have to buy the most expensive hat. You don't have to buy the most expensive gloves. Heck, you can go out here in the antique stores and find lots of gloves. I buy them there because I have small hands and I love them. You know, it's finishing. That's what it looks like. You look finished. And that's why we notice them, because it does look really finished and pretty. Okay. You see, yes, if they give you packages at the store, use that packet. Do not put sugar in it. Sugar will give them a instant high. Let's put it that way. But then it causes bacteria very fast. Decay. You don't want that. People say, oh, put the evergreens in sugar. I'm like, oh, Lord. Then you smell the smell. And what can it be? It's the evergreens reacting to the sugar. It's a fermenter. That's why they use it in booze. Hello, everybody. Some of this is, if you think about it, then you realize, yeah, that makes sense. So you don't use that. These commercial things that are made for it. Some people said aspirin. Well, aspirin would be better than sugar. I can tell you that. Clorox, you clean your buckets and your containers, depending on what kind they are, but if they're ceramic or something that you don't want to put Clorox and sterling silver. You clean them with that because you want to get out the bacteria, that whatever's been in there might have left a residue of bacteria. And you can put a tiny bit in the water, but not too much, because our water is so chlorinated nowadays that, yeah. But the powder that they give you is the safest thing. And I would buy it, and I bought a huge 5-gallon buckets. And we used a lot of it because we put it in the flowers when we cleaned them. We put it in the flowers when we made them. And I spent a lot of extra money on stuff I didn't have to. And consequently, I don't have a lot of money, but I don't care. I did it the right way, and I can sleep at night. I'd rather sleep at night, drive my old car, live in my little house. This is the way I feel about it. Money, as we all know, doesn't bring you happiness. It never has, and never will. So it can help. I'm not saying it can't help, but I've known a lot of people with it that were miserable. A lot of people without it were miserable, but I think I've known happier people who kept their perspective. Because you see a lot of that now in sports figures. They get money too fast. They don't know what to do with it. End up, losing everything and being drug addicts. And it's just sad. Anything, what? Oh, White House. Oh, yes. Well, I knew some of the chefs. Roland Mesmer, who just died suddenly this year, who came here with his cookbook. He was delightful, and his lifelong dream had been to meet Christian Renaud of La Petite, because Christian started a restaurant in Georgetown that was legendary, and the waiters wore roller skates. And he came down here one day, and he's French and very dry wit, but so funny. And when you get to know him, he's just a pussycat. And Christian says, "Now I can't even find them that can walk, let alone in roller skates." We'd all bust out laughing. And so Roland said that he was just a legend in the culinary world in Washington. So he couldn't wait to meet him. And the day he came to speak at Mary Washington with his first book, he went down to La Petite and met Christian, and they had lunch together. And he was so thrilled about it that he got to talk with Christian. And I remember one time I was going over to Debbie and Christian invited me to their house for dinner. And I said, "Debbie, how do you cook for him? Oh my gosh, And she said, "One easy. He compliments everything." He said, he knows how much work it is. And she said, "I don't care what I put on a plate. He has something nice to say about it." And I said, "Oh my gosh," when I had a jaw surgery, when my shop was across the street from them, and they were so sweet. They were so worried. And Christian would make me stuff that I could get in a straw. And when my mother had emphysema really bad, their little boy, Ramon, who runs the restaurant now, was only a kid. And he would spend a lot of times Friday nights with me because I was over there working on weddings and stuff. And he got bored over there, so he'd come stay with me. And Christian would say, John, anything you all want for dinner, just let me know. I said, okay, Christian. So I'd say, Ramon, what would you like for dinner, honey? Jan, can we order pizza? I said, okay, if that's what you want. And then on Saturday nights, a lot of times I'd take him. I said, Debbie, just let me take him home with me because my mother would just love him. And he liked to play games and cards, and mother would just love it. Well, they got to be big buddies. He called her, the grandchildren called her Wawa, and Ramon called her Wawa. And Debbie and Christian, what would Wawa like? They sent her crab cakes. They were just wonderful, wonderful to her. And I never will forget that. Get this in here. I met Bob Hope at the first, I think he was there for Queen Elizabeth's visit. He was so funny and so nice. And President Ford was so nice, and Betty Ford, they were lovely, very personable family. And of course, I love Ronald Reagan. I have to say, he was a people person. I don't think he ever met a stranger. And he got a kick out of meeting you. I was crying, and he's going, now, honey, don't cry. And he's patting my, and she was lovely. And I told Daddy, I said, Daddy, that's awful. The press they gave her. I said, she was so good to us. I have all these autographed pictures from them. She had a party for us every year after Christmas for all the people who volunteered and worked. She had the Marine band. She had refreshments. She treated us like, it was wonderful. And they were very kind and thoughtful of the people who helped. And I heard many wonderful stories about Pat Nixon. Oh, they love Pat Nixon. If you were sick and you worked in the White House, especially if you were single or you lived by yourself, she would make soup and have someone take it to them. Cookies, call them personally and ask them, did they need anything? Was there anything that they could do for them? They just loved her. She said she was just a lovely lady. And I met Lady Bird. She came for the bicentennial, I believe, and I had a book she had written, and they said, bring the book, she'll sign it. I said, oh, I don't want to ask her to do that. And Mr. Young said, well, I'll do it, bring the book. He said, she won't care, Jan. And she was very friendly and personable, and the Bushes, of course, I love Barbara Bush. She was something. They loved her because she was just so, I remember she'd say those grandchildren, she'd say, don't put dishes of cookies out. Just put fruit. And she said, and just get little cans of drinks. I don't want any big cans because they won't drink, but half of it, leave it laying somewhere. And she then would lay the law down. Whatever you brought with you, when you get up and leave, you take it with you. These people are not your servants. And she'd tell them, no carrying food around, eating it. She was a mess, but she expected them to be respectful. Okay, I'm almost done. It won't take me a second to finish this. Now, this is a little boxwood tree. I'll spray it with this. You see how I did it? I make a point at the top. If you have one of those crazy Williamsburg cones, wooden cones with nails in it, throw it out or give it to recycling. Because that design was based on the 1700s when the houses were cold, in Virginia. And the stuff would last forever because it was so cold. But we are not living in the 1700s anymore, which is a good thing, I guess, in that respect. And you don't want it that cold. Now I'm going to make a bow to go on top of it. And I see how I'm doing. I'm leaving long streamers to tuck in the tree. And I was twisting it. Of course, the wired ribbon makes it so easy. You can put apples in this. You can put bells in it. You can put cones in it. I'm going to throw something in it real quick for y'all. Moss. And you can do it running around the tree or all over the tree. It doesn't matter. You can create your own. I've seen them with different color apples, the green apples and the yellow apples and the red apples mixed. I love that. Pardon, I cut it. Yes.
But is there a guide?
No, all I do is I had another piece down in here because I wanted this raised up higher and put that in the pot first with about this much lip so I have support. Then I take a whole block and I just carved it a little to give it a point. Not a real small point, but at least a square like this on top. Then I put that in and put dowels in it all the way through so I know it's holding so that you can move the thing around. And then I work around, get those sides angled down, and I get my height up. Then I work in smaller to get the shape. Some people don't do that. They end up with a big fat tree, it doesn't have a shape. And it uses a lot more boxwood when you do it that way. And, of course, if you have more real estate to the product, it's going to get more water, more, surface. If you put so much in it that it's fighting for a place, it's not going to last as long. Now, these, I definitely say, put them in a laundry tub or somewhere where you can, pour water down in them, let them sit until they drain. And you wouldn't have to do that like maybe every 8 to 10 days. Depends on how hot it is where you have it. The warmer it is, the more you'd have to water it. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Yes. Yes.
Not spraying with water.
Well, certain things don't do it as well. They used to tell you not to spray orchids, but that's not true. You can use fine mist on orchids. I probably wouldn't soak down the face of a dahlia that much because they're the tissue-y type bloom. Calla lilies probably might spot. You got to be careful with those too. But most of the things grow in nature. They're watered, sprayed. I mean, that they like it. They take it in through their petals as well. You don't want to soak them, so to speak. Now, hydrangeas, I don't care what you do. They like water any way you give it to them because the word hydrangea is the Latin for hydration. And they are drinkers, big drinkers. So you have to make sure they have good water sources or they get real soft and limpy. And the care is the thing. You've just got to make sure you give them good care. I put that on a pick, hide it on with a pipe cleaner because I don't want it to come off. And I'm just going to stick something in this real quick. And somebody's going to take it home. You don't have to tie it in here. It's not going anywhere. We didn't tie them in, even delivering them, because we knew how to handle them. That's the other factor. Not all delivery people are created equal. I found, well, John retired from Dahlgren and he took over in charge of it. But, I had one young boy from the college. He was in Young Life, who I adored. He worked for us through his undergraduate and graduate. And he moved to Newark for his job. And I went down there and did his wedding. Sweetest boy ever. We all crazy about him, but he listened. He followed my instructions to a T, how to handle things. And that's, if you handle them properly, they're fine, but you can't throw this stuff around. And I'd say, look, this people spend a lot of money. I spent a lot of hard hours working on this stuff. You've got to be very careful with it. It's fragile. You need to at least get a box or a crate or something and put something around it to cushion it, like cellophane or newspapers rolled up, anything to keep it from moving around. You don't want it moving around. I have carriers, that are made for it that I bought professionally. They're expensive, but again, we had to have them, and that we could put stuff in too. But we always planned on what we had to carry and how we were going to do it, no matter what it was. And we were always careful, because if you're not, you're going to regret it. No, they have cutouts in them to sit the bases down in. No, they don't mold to it, but that wasn't hard. I mean, a lot of things I had to box anyway because it depended on size. They were too big for the carriers, and we had to box them, or we had stuff in there that we put them up against, and we made sure they were stable before we went anywhere, because we had transport. I mean, I took weddings all over the place. And we never had trouble because we took time and used our heads and thought about it before we boxed them up and sent them out to the truck. And I kind of got really good at how much space I had to have, but we packed tight on purpose, you know, safe but tight. So there was no room for things to wiggle around. And just pray nobody would, you had to watch everybody for slamming on brakes and all that. Oh. And we were going for a wedding up in the Middleburg area, and one of my tires started going flat. Of course, I didn't know it in my car, and John was in another car, and some truck came by us, and he was going. So we pull over, and I'm like, oh no! So we pulled in the station and put air in it. We went about 20 miles, and somebody else was going. So I said, oh my gosh, and we had to keep stopping and putting air in it because it's one of those things in a stow and go van, it's up under the car. And we're like, oh my gosh, to get the tire. So we roll into the wedding venue with this tire completely flat. And the caterer was a good friend of mine, and they're standing out there, and they all got to laughing. I mean, of course, we called AAA, and they came and got that tire out and got a tire on it. And I said, well, how far can we go on this tire? We got 50 miles to go home. And he said, oh, you'll be okay. Just go slow. Don't go over 50. So we did. We made it. But that was my biggest fear, going somewhere, the car to break down or something in heat. Oh my gosh, it never happened, thank God. But I probably would have had a stroke on the site myself, because I would have not been happy, worried to death. We went up to, does anybody here remember the Evans Farm Inn? Well, we had a wedding up there one time, and the girl was German. Yep. The boy was from here. And a grandfather was a minister. He came from Germany to do the wedding. He was 90 years old. It was in July, and I'm thinking, outside ceremony. German people aren't used to this heat. But daggone, if it wasn't scorching that day. So we left early because we're worried about traffic and everything. Oh my gosh, it was so hot. Oh, and traffic was so bad. So I was a little bit behind the time I told him I'd be there. So it was before cell phones and all that. So I said, Charlie, pull over. I think Charlie was with me, and I'll use this payphone at this gas station. Payphone was out of order. So to get back in the car, we had to fight our way back in the traffic. So we get there, nobody was there. They couldn't get there either. That's the other problem in Northern Virginia, traffic. So we thought, we're looking around, we saw the spot on the trees. We said, oh, that must be the location. Well, somebody comes out, and I said, is that where the wedding is? Oh, they said, oh no, ma'am, it's on the roof. There's a roof garden. I'm thinking to myself, oh, that'll be nice and cool. So we get up there, and it's painted red, bright red, and it's so hot. I told Charlie, we were both dying. We had ferns and all this stuff, so we got it all decorated. And they came, and they were so nice, but they were all wiping sweat because they'd never been in heat this bad. That was the quickest wedding I ever saw in my life. So we went into the restaurant part of the inn to get some lunch, get us some iced tea. That tasted wonderful. The air conditioning in the reception part went out. I said, oh no, those poor people. Oh, geez. Yes. And I'm just putting a pickle on them, sticking them in here. You can put anything you want, it doesn't matter. I mean, anything that you like or want to use or you like in your decor. I put the wooden pick just right in it and stick it right in. And you can keep going. I'm going to add a couple pine cones real quick. The gold brightens up the green, as you can tell. I love pine cones. The bells I got at real early when they first put them out at Target. They're Martha Stewart, but they have a real pretty brushed finish, and I like the size. I look for bells everywhere. I love bells. Okay, I'm almost done. Pardon?
They have the higher ups have you on time.
I'm sure. Well, just blame it on me. I can take the heat. I'll just give it back to him. I'm older now. Like my doctor said, you can't accommodate people all the time. You got to expect them to accommodate you. I said, oh, okay. See what I'm doing? I stuck the ivy into the oasis. This is just ivy out of pots I have planted around the yard. It's variegated, grows like crazy out of my pots and grows into the ground, everything else. I'm just twirling it around. And somebody said, did you condition it? I said, oh yeah, I conditioned it all right. I pulled it, cut it off, laid it out in the rain. It's been in cold weather. It's conditioned already. When it gets really cold, you have 40-degree nights and you have rain, it is conditioned. You do not need to go through a bunch of rigmarole. And I've, done it both ways and had the same effect. It did fine. So I thought, this is wasting time. Some people soak it and carry on and do all this stuff. I got the same result both ways. So I said, we'll cut out that step. I'm just tucking the vine kind of under the, can you see it? Gives it a little interest, a little more dimension. Ready? And you could do this too, which this is treated reindeer moss. It's lime green. I'm just going to stick, while I'm pulling that off, I'll do that. It's texture and color that, is so important. Is that a dog? Oh.
I wish it was a dog.
I know.
Okay, okay. Get your cards ready.
8347648.
Anyone?
Oh, yeah. It's very heavy, so maybe somebody can help you. I don't know how far away you had to park, but it's, when they're heavy, be careful.
Okay, everyone, please give.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, and it's good, so good to see everybody. Oh,
Live Park Music, live piano 14 music, and James and Mrs. Elizabeth Monroe will be at the head.
and they have some lovely gift items, wonderful things for children that need to learn American history. And Virginia history. Huh.
Thanks again, James.
Oh, you're welcome.
Can I take a picture with you with the piano?
Oh, sure.